four-head river system on this earth. When the idea or the notion or the belief that the Garden of Eden was somewhere else, or over in Europe or in Africa or someplace over there, the Western Hemisphere was unknown. They did not know that the continent existed west of the Atlantic Ocean. Therefore, they couldn't search this continent along with the others to find the river of four heads and these other great natural monuments which the Bible said was related to the Garden of Eden. It came my pleasure and my responsibility and my duty to search the North American continent and definitely point out the same bare natural monuments that the Bible relates to.
Callaway points with pride to the official map of the U.S. engineers at Chattahoochee, which shows what Callaway says is the only four-head river system in the world. That is a system described in the Bible, where in Genesis, the river flowing out of Eden, which waters the garden, parts and becomes into four heads. First there is the Gihon, now known as the Flint River, which flows towards the land of Ethiopia. Then the Euphrates, the Spring Creek River, whose name was transferred to the Middle East after the flood. The Hiddekel River is Fish Pond Creek River, which borders the land of ancient Assyria. And finally the last of the four rivers, the wide and lovely Pison, the Chattahoochee, today a river of trade and commerce. The Apalachicola seems an unlikely name for the river flowing through Eden, but here, according to Callaway, is the heart of the garden. This peaceful river is the life source of the lush vegetation of the original habitat of the first man and woman. According to Callaway, the names of these rivers and the land surrounding them were transferred to the other side of the world when, after floating in the ark for 40 days and 40 nights, Noah and his family landed on Mount Ararat in Turkey. The legend of the Bountiful Garden, too, was transferred to the Middle East, where archaeologists have searched in vain for a four-head river system, such as described in the Bible.
Well, Mr. Callaway, everyone knows the story about the Garden of Eden and the Tree of Knowledge. Do you know where the Tree of Knowledge existed in this garden, and was it an apple tree?
The word apple, or the plural apple, is not even mentioned in the book of Genesis. That's been added on by fiction and superstition. The Bible mentions apple or apples 3 times, but they're speaking of the apple of the eye because it's in the shape of some apples, you know. The tree of knowledge of good and evil is a spiritual tree. God told Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden in the 16th verse of the 2nd chapter of Genesis, of every tree of the garden, of the fruit of every tree of the garden, thou mayest freely eat. There was not any forbidden fruit in the garden. But he told them in another verse, there's one in here, that if you eat that, you shall die. And that's the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Mother Eve thought a good long time before she made up a decision whether or not to eat the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And she decided that she'd rather live the 70 years that God had promised them by knowing good from evil and then die, rather than live on a parity with a totally insane person or an animal forever in paradise and never know right from wrong.
There is a certain magic here in the heart of these woods, for they are special woods to one man. To him the sanctuary of